people you talking about, they spent money on white women. They set up bars and they went playing pool and golf for $1,000 a hole, and they were known to make millions and millions when there wasn't no high taxes, and they were not hindered by white America. They were allowed to see the white America has completely closed all the doors on me. I'm not allowed to work in America, out of America. I was stopped right in my prime just when I started making money. So you can't compare me with nobody like Joe Lewis or nobody.
If you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is right to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
That other kind of socialism that revolutionizes the workplace, brings democracy to the workplace for the first time.
So that's one way. And then the other thing is, in my more optimistic days, he's such a perfect endpoint of everything that is toxic and dysfunctional about the United States, about capitalism, about the 80s, that maybe this is the final sort of disgusting burst before we evolve or change it to something better.
Talk about some things about why we need a new party. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of do this. Why do we need a new party? We need a new party because both parties suck,
What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode 22 of the Radical Democracy Show. I'm your host, Kamali Rose. Great to have you with us. We've taken some time away. Sorry for the unannounced hiatus there. Just been, leading up to the election, it was an overwhelming time, I think, for all of us for many different reasons. And then in the immediate aftermath of the election, I think that it was just necessary for me to step away a little bit and just take a little bit of a break, catch a little bit of a breather, and hopefully come back a little bit stronger than before. So, hope to be a little bit more consistent with the episodes now. But you'll have to bear with me as I sort of get back into the flow of things. And so I do expect some, rockiness tonight because, just shaking off some rust, got to shake off some rust. It's been like literally over a week since we've done our last live stream now. So, dang near 2 weeks, I think, but hopefully not that long, but it's been a while. So I missed you all. Glad to have you all with us. If you haven't done so already, please do me a favor and immediately hit that like button down below, like, subscribe, share this out. And if you're watching on Twitch, please follow us on Twitch. So before we get to the news today, I just want to make I think maybe a few quick announcements, maybe one quick announcement. But before I do, please, I'll go ahead and I'll make our announcement first, and then we'll do our usual stuff. So, big announcement for the show. We are now accepting recurring donations on Ko-fi. So, up until now, we've only been accepting recurring donations on Patreon, and just full disclosure, full transparency for y'all. Ko-fi takes out a lot less from what you donate. So when you donate on Ko-fi, a lot more goes directly to us here on the show, more so than any other platform. So it's something that we've been wanting to do for a while. In order to do that on Ko-fi, again, full transparency, it's a $5 a month. It's still, I think, their launch price. So usually I think it's $8 or $9 a month typically, but because they've recently launched this new feature, they're doing it, lifetime if you sign up now for $5 a month. So we signed up for the Ko-fi Gold program, which again is just a $5 a month flat rate. And then all that they take additionally to that, they don't take any additional fees from Ko-fi. The only additional fees that get taken out are through the Stripe platform that actually does the payment processing. So it's minimal fees being taken out, and it really gets the most money direct to us and out of the greedy capitalist fingers. And so we do appreciate anyone that would like to support us more directly. If you would like to give us the most direct support, and you're not like already on Patreon, or if you are subscribed on Patreon and would like to move over to Ko-fi, we invite you to do so, because again, it just more going directly to us. Let's keep our, these funds out of the capitalist system for as long as we can. We want to use and promote democratic businesses, worker cooperatives here on the show, and try to use those more. And so even for things like when we finally open up to do merchandise, we've already been looking into the lowest bar for us is at least union shops, and then, but preferably worker cooperatives. So we want to support other democratic workplaces, and we will try to make every effort to do so. Of course, it takes time and effort and energy to do so. So we need your support. And, if you can afford to do so, please support us. Again, on Ko-fi, there's links in the description box below, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. So if you're subscribed on Patreon and you feel like you want to shift over and get us an extra $1 or $2 a month from the subscription there, Patreon takes about somewhere between about 15 to 20% of fees on Ko-fi. Again, it's just a $5 flat rate, no matter how much we are making on there. And so, yeah, get us some funds more directly. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. We appreciate our entire Patreon community and everyone that supports us. Thank you to all of our Patreon crew. Love you all. And all of our Ko-fi crew as well. We appreciate you all. And all of our comrades here just chilling and hanging out that can't afford to do so. We know if you could afford to, you would. So don't feel bad. Never feel even an ounce, a drop, an iota of guilt or any kind of burden to do so. If you can't afford to do so, you can at any time stop your recurring donation. We absolutely do not want to be a burden on anyone. We are leftists here. We do not want to burden the working class in any way, shape, or form. So only if you can afford to do so, please head over right now, sign up to our Ko-fi, support us on Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/radical democracy, ko-fi.com. And again, links are in the description box below. You can also find links to our Patreon still in the description box below. And you can still support us on there. If you're already on Patreon, feel free to support us over there already. But, like I said, it's the most direct way to get it to us. The least direct way, unfortunately, is the super chats. They take the most. It's a really convoluted process. You can't withdraw until you get over $100 donated. So your money's just sitting there stuck with YouTube until you get over $100 donated. So to anyone that donated to us on YouTube, we apologize for not understanding in depth the rules, because they really don't reveal them to you. They're not very transparent about it. And so we are trying to be as transparent as we can, be as democratic as we can, and bring the information to the people, and then let y'all decide. If you have any comments, any, you feel that this is, you support the idea, don't support the idea, please let us know in the comments, let us know in the chat, let us know in the Discord if you're in there. We absolutely read every message that comes across there, and we definitely take that to heart, and we will work with the community to try to make this as democratic as possible. So one awesome other announcement that I don't know if I have a banner for, unfortunately, because I didn't prep. Maybe I should just quickly make a banner for this. Hold on, y'all gonna have to bear with me. So let me see, 1 second, y'all. All right, almost there. All right. Okay, so next announcement up that I have. So next announcement is that this one was an awesome one, and super thankful to, again, our coffee community for this one. So thank you to our coffee community, to everyone that tipped us on coffee and helped contribute towards the goal to get our super producer Tammy a mic. I am super excited to announce that we have made that purchase. So we got super producer Tammy a mic. I don't know if you can see it because the light reflecting off the box here, but we got Tammy a mic here. Here, let me see if I can block my face out and let it take focus here for you. See, so we got Tammy a mic here. It's the same kind of mic that I have. So the exact same mic that I have, Tammy's got one. These mics are like $130 on anywhere you can find them. They're $130, $129.99 plus tax. And then I was able to also, really cool, you may have noticed already, I have a new addition here. And we were also, as a part of the sort of package that came along with that mic, we were able to get me this like boom arm and a pop filter. So let me know how the audio sounds in the comments. If I sound clear, if I'm coming in clear enough, I might have to make some adjustments over time, and you'll see this thing moving around. And eventually I need to get a studio quality mic. This is like the bare minimum for streaming. And so this is, we're super excited. So from now on, when Tammy has something to say, hopefully as she feels comfortable doing so, we will have Tammy pop in from time to time whenever. And so it won't have to be relayed through me anymore. I will no longer accept any relayed comments anymore. She'll have to feel comfortable with that, because it's just a better experience for y'all viewing at home, and we want to make sure that we are, focusing on the experience for you. So if Tammy is comfortable doing so, can I get a thumbs up if you are comfortable saying what's up? Okay, so let's do a test here. We haven't really tested this out. Hopefully the mic's not muted or anything over there, as long as it's not flashing. So we're gonna try this out and see. This is what it'll seem like. Oh, okay, so we're dealing with it.
Picture of my cat Sesame.
So we'll have to fix the feedback on here, because we're right now we're in the same room, and so we have to set the mics up so that it doesn't catch my audio. So I'll work on that, y'all. All right. And so this is what we needed to test. All right. So I just need to shut up when Tammy comes on from now on.
Like I was saying, that's a picture of my cat Sesame. He just turned 2.
All right, so that's Tammy there. Tammy, say what's up to the peoples, to the comrades.
Oh yes, hello comrades. Thank you.
Nice. So you'll hear Tammy pop in from time to time, and I want to try one other thing out. Am I still getting it? Okay, no, when I pop you out, it's like you're knocked out of the audio. Okay, so just needed to test all that. Thank you so much for bearing with us. Oh no, okay.
No, my audio is still on. I just muted myself so you would stop.
Okay.
Reverb.
Okay, nice. Awesome. So all right, so Tammy will be able to pop in. We know for now we'll just have to, only one of us will talk at a time. And she's able to just pop on, drop a thought. yeah, I'm super excited for that. So super excited to have Tammy and in the building and able to share her wisdom with us. She's a deeply insightful human being, and it will be great to have her voice on the show. So but we'll be able to our guests will still be able to chat with Tammy freely. I'll have to just mute myself so that we can we'll be able to manage our mics between the two of us. So awesome. And What Up America says audio sounds great. Look up polar pattern if you want to get rid of the crosstalk. I will absolutely right now I'll just throw it up there so that I know to research this and make sure that we fix the patterns of where our audio is picking up from. So Tammy, also make sure that your mic is set to cardioid on the back and not omnidirectional. I think sometimes it's set by default to omnidirectional. The cardioid is the one that kind of looks like a butt, kind of. Okay, awesome. So let's test that out one more time, y'all. I'm sorry, y'all going to be our guinea pigs tonight. So we're going to test out one more time. Let's see how much it picks up my audio here. So you unmute yourself and let me just see what kind of crosstalk we get.
Hello?
Yeah, nothing from you. Yours is fine. Mine I think is angled. Yours is angled in a way that it's angled at me. We'll have to have you set up so that you're angled away from me.
How about now? Is it working?
Yeah. And I think that I'm just a louder person as well. So
Hello? Oh yeah, no, it's not picking you up at all.
yeah. Okay.
Oh no, right.
Yeah. All right. So good test. All right. Cool. Appreciate y'all being guinea pig for us. We'll get that worked out and situated. And cool. What Up America says awesome interview on the Vanguard, Kamali. Thank you so much. That was really awesome. Check that out if you haven't already. I was guest on the Vanguard on YouTube, and so you can check out that show. It was really fun chatting with Zach and Gavin, who we've had on the show before. So those are really awesome comrades of ours, and it was really fun chatting with them. So what I'm going to do now, once I get the thumbs up, we have Kwame from Raise Fist Media in the building. And so with no further ado, I think let's bring in our guest, Kwame. So I'm going to bring in Kwame here. Okay, awesome. My producer doing some things in the background. So what's up, Kwame? How's it going? Can you hear us coming in loud and clear there?
What's up, y'all? Can y'all hear me okay?
Yep. You coming through loud and clear. Oh, and I should mention, actually, I should mention this about the mic. I don't know if y'all noticed, but it had this thing. So with the mic, it just happened to be the version of the mic that came with this like boom arm and stuff. It came with this like I gotta block my face for it to like catch it. Yeah, but it came with this like thing, and it's like a free download of Ghost Recon Breakpoint for PC. So if anyone plays PC and would like this game, it's just like a free download of the game as far as I understand it. I think that it might only be, it seems like a Windows only, but sometimes I play games that are like, still work on the Mac or whatever. But so I don't know if this is a Windows only download, but if you have a Windows machine and that's a game that you're interested in, just drop us a comment and I'll send you, I'll figure out a way to send you this promo code for it. So we just, I just figured somebody in the audience might be able to make some use out of it. I definitely won't. So let me know. Just drop me a comment, drop it in the chat, drop it in the comments if you are interested. If you have Windows machine and are interested in playing Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Tom Clancy game. So it's been a while since I played one. So all right, with no further ado, I think we should start getting to some stories. But before I do, I should say definitely always check out Raise Fist Media on YouTube, on Twitter. Make sure you give them a follow, give Kwame a follow. So please check them out, give them a follow, make that happen. And as always, support us on Patreon and on Coffee. Links are in the description box below, but you can always support Kwame on Patreon at patreon.com/raisedfistmedia. Whatever you can afford, please support independent Black left media. Kwame does, tell them what you do over there, Kwame.
It's basically entertainment, pop culture, through a leftist lens. Video games, movies, TV, all that good stuff. The general going ons. We touch on music. We actually teamed up in recently, our last episode. We did a really, really dope video on our buddy Lupe Fiasco and some interesting things he had to say. If you haven't checked it out yet, I recommend it. And we have some great, great stuff coming up for y'all soon. I maybe towards later at the end of the show, I'll tease what we got coming up a little bit later for y'all.
Awesome. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so first story that we're gonna cover today, like I said, y'all, this is first day back after a while, so definitely shaking off some rust. Bear with me. I got a bunch of stories I want to cover, 4 or 5 stories that I'm hoping to cover, hoping to get through them all within 90 minutes, hopefully, because we're already 15 minutes into the show. So we're going to try to breeze through all of these, not, give them the time that they deserve, of course. And we'll try to take comments in between. We'll take a few comments in between, but we'll get to the, we'll make sure that we cover all the comments by the end. So, all right, with no further ado, let's get to it. So first story that I want to talk about today, Joe Biden has started to make some staff picks already, and I think that it bears watching and paying attention to, because I think it's a massive signal to how he plans to staff his administration already, and what that means again for the left. That's what my concern always is how how does this bear out for us on the left, and what should our our strategy be to react to this, if any. So, all right, let me get to this. So his first pick that I want to talk about is his chief of staff. Joe Biden selected Ron Klain as his chief of staff, and what isn't being talked about enough right now is that Ron Klain is known as an engineer of the crime bill. It's a little known fact, unfortunately. It should be much, a much better known fact, much more widely known fact, but unfortunately it's just not being discussed enough. And so we're gonna look at what some of the reaction was from the squad and folks on the left. And also just talk about who he really is. And so first, I just want to draw your attention to this article. And this is from something called Moguldom. So this article is on moguldom.com. And it just goes to show you how, you have to, it's not propping up enough in mainstream media. So you got to kind of go to some further out there sources in order to get this information, unfortunately. So not being covered enough by the mainstream media, but in this article from moguldom.com, they talk about this pick of Ron Klain for chief of staff. So I'm just going to read a little bit from this article. Appointed by Biden, Klain was chief counsel for the Senate Judiciary Committee from 1989 to July 1992. In this role, he directed the committee's professional staff in its work against crime on matters of constitutional law, drug policy, and major judicial nominations. So he's handling drug policy, in the midst of the war on drugs here. We're talking 89 to 92, this is the late 80s, early 90s. War on drugs is in its prime. We're right leading up to the 1994. This is right before the 1994 crime bill hits, so a lot of tough on crime rhetoric happening. And so it says he advised U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno, who served from 1993 to 2001 on legal and policy matters. So this is through the, Clinton administration all the way up till the George Bush administration. So he advised U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno, who served from 1993 to 2001 on legal and policy matters, coordinating the administration-wide effort to craft and win passage of the Clinton crime bill and the ban on semi-automatic assault weapons, according to the Clinton White House archives. As Clinton's chief advisor on criminal justice issues, it was Klain who thought up the 100,000 new cops initiative, Ruth Shalit reported for The New Republic in 1994. And this is a quote from that. Clinton had a big crime speech coming up, John Kroger, the campaign's deputy issues director, told The New Republic in 1994. We had no idea how many extra cops would be a good thing. Bruce Reed and I called Ron from Little Rock. He said, would 100,000 be enough? So the 1994 crime bill, as a reminder for those who don't remember, but the 1994 crime bill, aka the Clinton crime bill, aka the Biden crime law, was the largest crime bill in U.S. history. It provided for 100,000 new police officers, $9.7 billion in funding for prisons, and $6.1 billion in funding for quote unquote prevention programs designed with significant input from police officers, experienced police officers. So, the bill disproportionately targeted African Americans with mass incarceration and exacerbated racial inequality in the U.S. justice system. Its effects are still felt today. Black Americans represent 13% of the U.S. population, but account for 40% of the incarcerated population, according to prisonpolicy.org. Moving on to who he is, he also this article goes on to talk more about Klain's background. Klain resigned as Biden's chief of staff in 2011 to join Revolution, the venture capital firm founded by former AOL founder and CEO Steve Case, New York Times reported. He was appointed in 2016 to the executive council of TechNet, the trade group that lobbies for Silicon Valley interests in Washington, D.C. So they're actually like the most prevalent lobbyist for Silicon Valley in DC is this TechNet group. They're the most powerful lobby group for Silicon Valley. So TechNet is a network of tech CEOs and senior executives that claims to be, quote, the voice of the innovation economy, fostering a climate of innovation and competition. The organization says it advances public policies and private sector initiatives at the federal, state, and local levels that, quote, make the U.S. the world leader in innovation. From 1996 to 2020, TechNet contributed $1.261 million to the Democrat and Republican parties, according to Open Secrets Center for Responsive Politics. So we're going to take a look at that a little bit further, and we're going to dig into that because I think that also brings up a really important point about these, donors to the Democratic Party that also are the same. They serve the same set of donors. The Democrat and Republican parties serve the same set of donors, and I want to dig into that. But before we look at that, and we'll take a look at that in a second. Kwame, do you have any immediate thoughts on this that you'd like to share? I can definitely launch into some of mine.
I mean, my first thought, based on this dude being the same guy who worked on this crime bill, it's people keep telling us that like people can evolve, people can change, but it's hard to believe that they can do that when they're running in the same circles, right? Because that's the whole thing. Like when you get out the streets, you get out the hood, you can typically do better until you slip back in with the people you were causing trouble with before. So when his immediate first thing to do is go link up with the guy that he teamed up with to lock up a whole lot of people before, that makes me a little nervous, and it's a little hard to believe that he's really changed.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that it's absolutely indicative. You have to look at somebody's record. That's all that we have to base it off of is what is your record? When you had power, what was your record? What did you do with that power? And we can see, what Ron Klain did with this power. He, locked up Black people to, at historic levels, and created the mass incarceration problem. So I definitely, this is something that I think is not being talked about enough, is not being discussed enough. And I think it's evident, that I think that's evident by the way that some folks on the left have responded to this, this news. And I think that it's very telling, when you see how, I think it's indicative of just how underreported this information is. And I don't know that these people are definitely like nefarious about it. I just think that they are misinformed or underinformed or ill-informed, at least. And I think one of the main people that I would point to is AOC's response to this. So I'll just show you here how AOC responded to this, this news breaking about Biden choosing Ron Klain for his chief of staff. So this was her tweet when that news went out. She says, you can see she's retweeting the New York Times that said, breaking news, President-elect Joe Biden is said to have chosen Ron Klain to be his chief of staff, to which AOC responded, good news and an encouraging choice. Thumbs up. So this is our supposed, left resistance here. And you got AOC. And now something that wasn't mentioned about Ron Klain that should really grab AOC's attention as somebody that is the sort of champion of the Green New Deal is that not only is Ron Klain a lifelong lobbyist as well, who has lobbied for Fannie Mae, the company that is partially responsible for the housing crisis, the 2008 housing crisis, that had to be taken over by the federal government after that 2008 housing crisis. Ron Klain was also a lobbyist for asbestos and for asbestos corporations. So you got an asbestos lobbyist here and the engineer of the crime bill. And here is our supposed left, a leader on the left here, AOC, saying good news and an encouraging choice, which signals to all of her followers who are on the left, who trust her and trust her analysis that, oh, maybe this is a good dude that we can trust, when really this pick is a huge middle finger to the left and should be taken as a slight to the left, and people should recognize it for what it is. And we shouldn't lie to people. Let's not lie to people about what this is. And look at that tweet has 111,000 likes to it. So AOC's tweet has, for her saying good news and an encouraging choice, 111,000 people at the time that, at this moment that we're recording this, over 110,000 people have liked this tweet. That's 100,000 people that think that they know something about Ron Klain now and think that they can trust him a little bit more, when really they shouldn't be able to. And really they should be questioning this and should be questioning AOC's judgment in this case, really. So I thought that was a really bad look for AOC there. And before we get off of this, story here, I just wanted to show that, highlight that point that they mentioned about in that story about where that TechNet group that Ron Klain was on this, he's an executive for and is on their board of investors for TechNet, this Silicon Valley lobbying group. This is the Open Secrets page that was linked to in that article for TechNet. So this shows the Open Secrets. That's opensecrets.org. You can go. They are a great, nonprofit organization that tracks all the funding going into any political campaign. It has to all be filed with the FEC. And so they just sum it up into, they put it into these very nice digestible formats that are easy to sort of for an average person to go through and to better understand sort of where are a campaigns or politicians' donations coming from. And you can also break it down by the party as well and see it over a period of time. So what we're going to be looking at here is a graph from, for going back a couple of decades, actually, on where TechNet was donating their money to. So let's take a look at that. And this is on opensecrets.org. And you can see here, again, this is just for TechNet. And you can see each year, and I'll just hover over them so you can see which year these are referring to. And you'll see that here in 1998, so, we have 94, that's Bill Clinton gets elected first time. So in 98, when Bill Clinton was getting elected a second time, they gave more money to Republicans. In fact, they gave, 35,000, 36,000 to Democrats. They gave 52,000 to Republicans. In 2000, this is when George Bush is running for president now. So we got George Bush running for president in 2000, and TechNet, gave gave 136,000 to Republicans, gave more money to Republicans with George Bush running. They gave more money to Republicans than they did to Democrats. In 2002, midterms, about the same, about equal. In 2004, again, where this is George Bush's reelection after the Iraq war. And where are they giving their money? Where are they putting their money? More to Republicans than to Democrats. This is in 2004, right after, in George Bush's reelection. You can see, again, midterms, they give a little bit more to Democrats. This is how they balance things and keep the status quo maintained. And then in 2008 with Obama, boom, spike, hugest, outsized donations. They love them some Obama, and Obama was great for Silicon Valley. So it makes perfect sense why they would donate so much to Obama. And then you can see in the midterms, they barely gave anything. They really cut back their political donations. But by 2012, Obama's reelection campaign, they actually give more to Republicans again. And then you can see in 2016, they give about the same to both. Same thing going all the way out. In 2020 now, they gave more to Biden, so they favor Biden more, of course, and that's Ron Klain, at the head of this organization, and he gets a job with Joe Biden after helping him, earn a little bit of money as well, raise a little bit of money. So I just wanted to show that and highlight the fact, because I think it really highlights, it's just a microcosm of how these companies do this. And their corporate donors, they donate to both people. It's just a way to hedge your bets, right? You hedge your bet. Whichever one wins, they owe you something. If you got enough money, you give to both of them. When you narrow the candidates down to just two potential candidates, it narrows it down. So that's all they have to do is just bribe two people, and they got an in no matter who wins. And so I just wanted to highlight that, because I think that it really shows what these lobbyist groups and are really about and how they function behind the scenes. And yeah, I think that this is a disgusting pick. It's a terrible pick. That was a garbage take by AOC. She was absolutely wrong. She should have corrected herself. I haven't seen her correct herself in any way, which is really, really troublesome to me. And I think that she needs to come out and be on the record of saying, no, I've done my research now, and this is a horrible pick. This guy was an engineer of the crime bill, that created the mass incarceration problem. He is terrible to, Black lives in this time of a Black Lives Matter movement. And I think that it's incumbent upon anyone that has given even a tacit endorsement or a full-throated endorsement like AOC did here. I think it's incumbent upon them to come back out and make a correction for that. And I'd really like to see that, because otherwise they've done a disservice to the left and are spreading misinformation about a really horrible pick. And a chief of staff is an important pick. Let it be known. The chief of staff is the person that they have a lot of power in sway in the staffing, the actual staffing of the administration. So they're going to help pick the staff of the administration, as well as they handle sort of some of the day-to-day. They take off some of bear some of the brunt of the day-to-day work, so that it doesn't have to make it all the way to the president. So these are really powerful positions. That the chief of staff is a very powerful position. And for him to give it to an engineer of the crime bill, I think you couple that with the Kamala Harris, vice presidency, and you just got the perfect storm of, three tough on crime, anti-Black, legislators and prosecutors here. And I think it spells trouble for the Black Lives Matter movement, and for, Black communities in general, and for poor brown communities as well. So if you're poor, you're going to be, be subjected to incarceration at an outsized rate. And so poor white folks too, you're going to feel it as well. So, yep. Any other thoughts before we push along?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It is just really disheartening and not reassuring at all that, like you said, between the Kamala Harris pick to this pick, it's just, I don't know how anyone who was out there screaming Black Lives Matter and out there protesting these deaths are going to. I need to hear from y'all. I need to hear from y'all, because y'all told me that when Biden got into office, you would stand against him and you would be out there, you'll push him left. Like, I need to hear from y'all on this pick, because if not, then again, I just feel like you're already out to lunch. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant brunch.
Yep, indeed. All right, so dope. I agree, totally agree. Let's push along to our next story. If we have any comments that we need to get to, we can throw them up, but we'll keep chugging along in the meantime. And so please, if you haven't done so already, if you're watching, you haven't done so already, please hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, and share this out. Hit that share button and share this out. Nice to spread the word. We need you to help spread the word and help us grow the channel. So please like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and share this out far and wide. Really appreciate that. All right. For our next story, we're going to stay on the topic of Joe Biden's staff picks. And the next one up is, I think, just indicative of what this administration is all about with weaponized identity politics. So let's see. Give me 1 second here. Yep. 1 sec while we pull this up. All right. So Joe Biden has selected Cecilia Munoz to it as a one of the newest additions to his transition team. And Cecilia Munoz, for those who are not familiar with her, we are going to take a little look at who she is. But she is best known, I believe, as the woman who defended child separation under Obama. So Joe Biden has added her to his transition team. The transition team is, of course, responsible for selecting, the staff of the administration, for staffing out the administration. So this is a very powerful position here. And what he's done is he's put in a person who was Obama's top immigration advisor while Obama was the, quote, deporter in chief, and responsible for locking kids up in cages, help build the cages, and as well as, again, defended Obama's child separation policy. So we're going to take a look here at Cecilia Munoz and who she is. Let's start with a clip of her. So this is from, this was tweeted out by Branko Marcetich. Marcetich, sorry, it's Marcetich. So Branko Marcetich he's a writer at Jacobin magazine, and he tweeted this out. So he's also the author of Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden. So somebody that is, following along with the Biden, has been following Biden for a while now, is sort of an expert on him, and is definitely an anti-Biden entity. And so on the left, from Jacobin Mag. So let's check out what he tweeted here. It's just a clip of Cecilia Munoz being interviewed on back during the Obama administration. Again, this is Cecilia Munoz, now Joe Biden's a member of Joe Biden's transition team, but she was Obama's top immigration advisor. And let's check out this clip of her. All right. It's just a 1 minute clip, really quick.
Supporters of the president, the Illinois supporters of the president, the Illinois governors of New York have said secure communities is doing more damage. And in fact, there's collateral damage of mothers being separated from their children, of fathers being separated from their children.
Right.
Is this collateral damage that this administration is prepared to accept?
Well, as a result of the concerns raised by the governor of Illinois, the governor of Massachusetts, and others, DHS made adjustments in how it's implementing the policy. So the feedback from the community has been important in shaping DHS's work. But at the end of the day, when you have an immigration law that's broken, and you have a community of 10 million, 11 million people living and working in the United States illegally, some of these things are going to happen, even if the law is executed with perfection. There will be parents separated from their children. We don't have to like it, but it is a result of having a broken system of laws. And the answer to that problem is reforming the law, making sure that we have an immigration system that works. You cannot fix the heartbreaking things that happen as a result of immigration enforcement.
So that is her saying, well, when you got 10 to 11 million people that are here in the country illegally, then, sorry, but child separation is going to happen. She said, quote, at the end of the day, when you have an immigration law that's broken and you have a community of 10 million, 11 million people living and working in the United States illegally, some of these things are going to happen. Even if the law is executed with perfection, there will be parents separated from their children. We don't have to like it, but it's a result of having a broken system of laws. And the answer to that problem is, quote, reforming the law. And not reforming the law just, always worked out, and it worked out under the Obama administration to mean harsher penalties, further separation of families. And we saw that they set up the situation and they set up the conditions and left in place all the conditions for the next administration, a Republican administration, to come in to use all those facilities, those detention centers, the concentration camps, the cages that they built, that the Obama administration built. They allowed Donald Trump to come in and to use all of that infrastructure that they developed to then further torture, these people and these families. And, you can see the way she feels about these people, because she's essentially saying, oh, they're illegally here. So, screw the people that are here illegally. Well, if you get separated from your child, it's your fault because you were here illegally. And, all we can do is reform it. All we can do is, reform the law. We can't really stop the child separation. No, they definitely had the power to stop the child separation. And I just felt like this was really, to me, she's the Kamala Harris of immigration. It's the hashtag girl boss. You pick a Latinx woman as the person that's going to lead the charge of exploiting and, damaging immigrant communities. And so, in the same way that you pick the black woman who's responsible for executing, Joe Biden served up the laws with his tough on crime bills, and Kamala Harris went and executed it and prosecuted people based on those corrupt laws. And so you have just the perfect combination here of people, and what they're really doing is signaling how they really feel and what their real intentions are. So if you think that we're going to get more humane, immigration policies, what we're really going to get is a lot of people like, essentially this is like almost like the Gina Haspel pick for CIA, where it was like, oh, Trump picked a woman to lead the CIA. And it's like, yeah, that woman is literally the woman responsible for torture in Abu Ghraib. But sure, let's clap because Trump picked a woman to this position, or Joe Biden nominated a black woman for, he picked a black woman for vice president. But it's the worst, it's a neoliberal who is responsible for, mass incarceration, for, incarcerating people for over cannabis, and when she was AG in San Francisco, and also for, locking up trans people in the wrong, gendered prisons, and also keeping people beyond their sentences, locking up parents of truant kids.
That's one thing I felt a little better about going into this clip. I was expecting the clip that still haunts me of Kamala laughing at locking up the truant parents. So I guess this was minorly less offensive than that, I guess. But yeah, no, I think you're spot on. They're going to break the glass ceiling by waterboarding it and then deporting it out of the country is what this identity politic BS that I'm seeing. And I know this is about Joe Biden. I don't mean to harp on Trump much, but like, we said this before, he really was the best thing to happen to the Democrats. He really was. He really, really was. And he raised the bar of shittiness, of just stacking your team with such absolute garbage that I guess these people look better by comparison, because he put forward Dick Dastardly and Voldemort. So when we get Dolores Umbridge and Christine from Selling Sunset, it's a little bit less bad, even though they're still pretty awful people. What are we doing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. It's all they and somebody, Brian Dew from our Patreon community and from our Discord server mentioned this in our Discord recently, as well as so this has been a thing that folks have there's been this chatter about, and it's clear that the Trump is, he's perfect for, there's a set of Democrats and the Never Trump crew, the Lincoln Project, who they rely on Trump. When your whole thing is Trump bad, and that's the entirety of your analysis, then you need a Donald Trump in order to continue to exist and to fundraise off of. Man, Donald Trump has been great for Democratic fundraising. They just set $100 million on fire in the Amy McGrath race against Mitch McConnell. The Democrats set $100 million on fire, and they set $100 million on fire in the Lindsey Graham versus Jamie Harrison race. They had polls that suggested that those people had a chance. People donated with these, under this false premise of having some hope for that, and people donated, millions of dollars. I mean, there was literally $100 million to each of those donated to each of those campaigns, and they got wrecked, just like any of the prior candidates that tried to run against these folks that didn't raise a tenth of that money. And so you had Marquita Bradshaw, who raised like a small percentage of that, and she performed just as well as they did in Tennessee as they did in Kentucky and South Carolina. And there was all that money was just for naught, and they give people these false hope. And I think that's another, just a damn shame that money, goes into these campaigns like that, when there's no chance of these things, these people winning. And so it's just sad to see, that immense waste, just hundreds of millions of dollars like that go to waste. So this pick here from Biden is exactly what I expect. It's the weaponized identity, hashtag girl boss, pick a Latinx woman, of course, white passing, Latinx woman, and use that person's identity, hide behind that person's identity while you exploit the very people that they're supposed to, provide representation for, this symbolic representation. And all you get is the symbolic representation. We got the symbolism of Barack Obama, our first Black president. I felt so good about it. I just fell asleep for 8 years, and I ignored, and I didn't care that he was bombing Black and brown people over in, Asia, the Middle East, Africa. There was no concern, because it was, we got a Black president, and I defended the hell out of him against people that would call out some of his terrible things. He's the deporter in chief, and I would just, I was content with having a Black president, and so I know how easy it is to dupe people into this way of thinking, and to just make people complacent with identity politics and weaponized identity politics. And let's be real, nobody does identity politics more than the Republicans. They are an all-white party. It doesn't get more identity politics than the Republicans, who are a majority white party, and overwhelmingly majority white party. It's like 90 something. It's like 90% white. Of course, goes without saying, we should mention that Trump was able to pick up, he made gains this past election amongst every group except for white men. He was able to gain. So even after 4 years of racism, xenophobia, misogyny, the Democrats they put up a candidate bad enough that Trump was still able to make inroads with every single group: white women, black men, black women, Latino women, Latinx men. Trump was able to make gains with all of those groups. He increased his vote share, his vote totals from 2016. And I think that you can't just sum that up to, those people are just self-loathing, self-hating, Black, brown, Latino, Latinx people, women. No, they're not just self-hating people. There's something, it says a lot that the Democrats had so little to offer up, and there was so little substance offered up, that people were willing to go to a Donald Trump that they're the last people you would imagine, based on all of his awful garbage rhetoric, moving over to him. But he was able to pull in better numbers. And I think that that's something that, can't be ignored, because those people aren't just like racist misogynists. They're people that are clearly disaffected voters, and were offered nothing by the Democratic Party because they didn't go out to vote for Trump last time. And something about these 4 years, economic depression, total failure, 250,000 Americans dead in the middle of a pandemic, and you let Trump gain in the midst of that. I mean, the Democrats took a big risk putting up Joe Biden, and barely they scrape by with this through this, by the skin of their teeth. And they've learned all the wrong lessons, as we predicted here on the show, that they would learn all the wrong lessons from this victory, which is, just using it to bash the left more. And what is so good about Trump for the Democrats is that they can use it to, push down the left. And this was mentioned in our Discord server. Brian Dew, talked about this. It's used as a way to tamp down on the left and say, oh, you can't criticize Joe Biden because you're going to help Donald Trump if you criticize Joe Biden. So they'll use that as a cudgel against the left to say, and they'll continue to use that excuse until there is no more Donald Trump. And then they get somebody new, Tucker Carlson, Tom Cotton in 2024, or, maybe Donald Trump runs again, but in 2028, they'll find a new, boogeyman to point to say, you got to vote for this establishment corporatist Democrat that's going to do nothing for you and is hostile to everything you believe in. Because if you don't, look at that much worse thing that's going to come on the horizon. And so they do this all the time, and they're usually really successful with it, and they were successful again. So the left just has to start winning in primaries if we really want to start winning electorally, and also looking outside of electoral politics. We advocate workplace democracy, start to build democracy in the workplace, because we've lost control of our democracy in our political system. We need to build democracy in our economic system. Whatever system we build in our economic system replicates itself in our political system. You can just see that happen anywhere that any economic system has existed. It just replicates itself in the political system. In our current economic system, we got a handful, the employer, a handful of board of directors who have all the power. The employer over the set of employees, they get to decide. It's a top-down authoritarian structure where a small handful of people make the decisions for the masses. It's undemocratic. It creates inequality and instability everywhere it ever has existed, and it's about damn time that we got rid of it. And so please support the show, patreon.com/radical democracy. Or again, you can now support us on Coffee at coffee.com/radical democracy. And you can now set up, you can do recurring donations, not just one-time tips on Coffee now. So if you'd like to sign up for a recurring donation on Coffee, please do so. That's the way to get money most directly to us. And again, we're using that money to build democracy in the workplace here. So please support democratic workplaces, support independent Black left media, support the show, the Radical Democracy Show, over at Coffee. Links in the description box below. And at the very least, please, if you can't afford to do that, just head over, click that, smash that like button right down below. Smash that like button right now. Do it right now. I need you to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And follow Kwame at Racefist Media on YouTube and on Twitter. Check him out and follow him on both of those platforms. Please give him a follow. All right. So let's we'll keep pushing along here. Let me just take a quick look. What's our next story up? Oh, okay. Yeah. So we wanted to talk about what is, unfortunately, we had a historic loss for the labor movement over in California. And it's really, even though this was a law that passed only in California, it has ripple effects throughout the entire country. And so what we're referring to is California's Prop 22, which was a bill proposed that allows Uber and other, gig economy platforms like Uber, DoorDash, these platforms. It allows them to classify their employees as contractors and not as employees, which means that they don't have to protect their employees in the same way. So let me just grab this story for us. All right. So we're gonna I just want to I'm gonna have Richard Wolff break it down for us. So this is economist, Marxian professor of economics, Richard Wolff, Dr. Richard Wolff, and I'm gonna have him break down what this bill is and the significance, the historic significance of this bill passing and what it means for the labor movement. So the whole clip here is about a little over 5 minutes. I'm not going to play the full clip, but I don't know exactly where I'll cut out, but bear with me. All right, so let's play a little bit of this clip and then we'll come back and we'll discuss. Okay.
22. And the basic point of that proposition, which passed in.
Sorry, I need to slow that down.
Proposition 22. And the basic point of that proposition, which passed in California, even though California it allows Uber, Lyft, and other service car or vehicle driving entities to treat their workers as contractors rather than as employees. Contract economy or the gig economy, words like that. I want to drive home to you that this is extremely important. It is a defeat for the entire working class. And that means the majority of us here in the United States, the overwhelming majority of us who are legal label is attached to it. What Uber and Lyft got was an exemption. They don't have to protect their workers, their employees, by the simple device. You're a service provider with whom I have a contract. You're a gig worker. And in case there was ambiguity, and of course there were, here is a ballot. The people voted to allow them what? To exempt workers from, and here's the key point, 150 years in this country, maybe more, during which people fought like hell for all kinds of protections. You know, the length of the working day. So you can't be made to work more than a, because that's the law. That had to be fought for in this country for a long time. That you can't be physically used, that you can't hire children, that you can't impose on your workers sexual service procedure, that you have to have a toilet, that you have to have clean air, that you can't verbally abuse. You get the picture? Loads of protections. And a lot of those protections, insurance policies, so if a worker gets hurt, all of those protections apply to employees, and Uber and Lyft don't want to pay those costs. They are therefore not protected. It's profit in their pocket because they don't have to pay for the protections. That's what the law was there to force them to do, and they just got out of the law. And you know what's going to happen now? 49 other states are going to see the same effort made in those states. And man, if it can work in California, it's going to be easier in many other states for all the reasons you know. And is it only the Uber Lyft type of business? No, anybody now who employs to do a service can try to reclassify that worker as a gig worker rather than an employee, saving them money. This is an attempt to roll back the history of working people 150 years in this country. Make no mistake. That's why Uber, Lyft, and the others spent over $200 million on this obscure little vote. And here, many people were told in California that do this, pass this, because it'll enable poor people to get a job driving a car because they're having such a hard time. And a lot of the vote that gave this giftness were well-intentioned people who wanted to provide an opportunity. You know, it's like those people who voted to raise the minimum wage. Think about it. An ad on the TV screen. Don't you want to help a poor person make a living driving a car for their family? Reminds me of nothing so much as 100 years ago, when to keep child labor going in America, the awful process of making 5, 6, 7-year-old kids work all day in a rat infested sewing shop. And the ads then said, poor people need for their children to work. If you don't let their children work, they'll be even poorer. Yeah, you frame the question that way, and you can pull off the kind of defeat the working class. Something needs to be done to undo this. And the legislatures in California and across the country, and maybe a Joe Biden administration, is to take steps to prevent this from happening. Federal law can trump, pardon the expression, state law. That needs to be done.
All right, so that was Richard Wolff, and just breaking down the the effects of this California's Prop 22. He gave a lot of information there. Some of the highlights of that, I think were that Uber and Lyft spent $200 million on this effort. So Uber and Lyft were willing to spend $200 million. Of course, where does that $200 million come from? That $200 million comes from the profit that they generate from those employees working for them. So what do? These companies in a capitalist system take the money, the surplus of your labor that you work for, and they take that money that you work for, and they turn around and use that money to oppress you, to hold you down, to damage you and your family, to make sure that you don't get treated like an employee in the system. And so I think that's a really key thing to look out for in why capitalist systems are machines that continue to run this way, is because as long as you work under capitalism, you are going to continue to work in a system where you give your money to somebody else who might not have your best interest at heart, and they get to decide what to do with the surplus of your labor. In a democratic workplace, it just doesn't happen. In a democratic workplace, that means that all of those drivers have a democratic say in that. Are you going to decide to designate yourself as some worser designation, so that you lose the protections of like a minimum wage? They don't have to guarantee you a minimum wage when you work for Uber. You can go out for Uber and you could spend 2 hours and not get a single ride, and they don't have to pay you anything. They don't have to. You're not an employee of theirs. They don't have to pay you anything. So they set it up like that and to disadvantage the very workers that are generating that profit in the first place. They take the profit and then they use it to hurt those same workers. And he points out that one, this passed in a deep blue state. So, this law, this is an anti-worker law, anti-worker legislation, hurts workers everywhere. And it passes in a deep blue state that it has a ripple effect. If you can successfully pass legislation in California, you can pretty much successfully pass legislation anywhere. Just look at what happened with like cannabis legalization and decriminalization. And once something passes in California, you're talking about, tens of millions of Americans at that point. They hold a significant portion of the population there in California. I think it's like 30 million people is the population in California. I could be wrong. I might be thinking of Texas, that's like 28, 29 million. And then that would make California actually closer to 40 million, I believe. I think that's actually right, that it's over 40 million people in California. So you got 40 million people in California, that legislation already impacts. And now that's a proof of concept to those companies that, okay, we can spend less. Every other state is smaller than, has smaller population, less ground to cover than California. In California, you got to play into you got to get ads into over 100 different media markets, because there's all these different media markets for all the different areas of California. You know, it's like having different states essentially that they cover with their radio and their television stations. And so there's a ton of different media markets in California. So it's much harder to pass legislation in California than it is to pass it in other states. Yet they're going to be able to spend less money, and they already have a blueprint for how to do this. You just propagandize, right? And that's something that we're very familiar with here in Massachusetts, because here in Massachusetts, we are, you know, pretty prolific at knocking down progressive legislation, due in large part to effective propaganda being used against, you know, unwitting, well-meaning individuals who are, you know, supposedly liberal. And you would think that liberty includes things like, you know, being able to vote for whoever you actually choose to vote for, to be able to open up your options to vote. But we just knocked down ranked choice voting in Massachusetts because it was so effectively propagandized against. We also did it with safe patient limits. You know, for nurses, there was a great bill that would have passed in California actually, and all the studies were there, all the research studies have been done in California, saying that was effective legislation to give safe patient limits to nurses, that would have said, you know, just limit how many patients a nurse is allowed to see in one, you know, per shift or at a single time, which it increases the demand for workers. It forces hospitals, in order to meet that demand, to hire more nurses in. And the studies had proven this out. And, you know, the propaganda came in, the propaganda machine comes in, it says, oh no, it's going to be terrible for nurses. It's going to, you know, the hospitals are going to shut down because they're not going to be able to make up, you know, and hire enough nurses to staff this properly. And it's total BS. And the reality is that hospitals are running at profit right now. And all it means is that they would have less profits is all. They would have to hire more nurses, and it cuts into their profits a little bit. And those people effectively propagandize. You should be very, very wary of when you hear radio ads or television ads for anything. Like, please, hopefully nobody on the show is voting based on advertising. You got to, you know, understand who has the money to do advertising. It's the moneyed interest. Typically, it's going to be the capitalist class that benefits from media markets and things like that. So we have to, you know, do our own research and make sure, don't go voting on things that you don't understand. You know, definitely inform yourself, or just leave that line blank and let people, you know, that have the time and the privilege of researching these issues vote on them. You know, don't let yourself be propagandized to, and don't just hear a radio ad or a television ad and then make a decision to vote based on that. Do your own research. You know, and if you can't do the research, I really urge you to abstain from voting, and so that people can see, listen, you know, it takes less votes in order to pass this legislation, and it allows it, you know, it encourages, I believe, grassroots campaigns, because they can say, okay, at least we're not trying to go out there and have to get 10,000 votes. We only need 1,000 votes to pass this legislation. And so we just got to convince 1,000, you know, people. And so try to avoid voting on things that you're not familiar with. You know, like Richard Wolf said, these were well-intentioned people. They run ads that are like, you want to help these, you know, these poor unemployed workers. They're not going to be able to have, you know, if we classify them as employees, we're not going to be able to hire them anymore. It's going to cost too much, and we're not going to be able to employ them. You're not going to have flexible hours anymore and things like that. No, you can do flexible hours in a as an employee. You could still have systems where you let people come to work, check in anytime they want. There's no rule that says that if somebody's an employee, they have to be scheduled for a particular time every day. There's no rule that says that, but they can propagandize in that way. And it was very effective propaganda. So any thoughts on that, Kwame?
It really takes me back to the nurses, to the safe patient limits. And that was such a major key, what you said, because when I think back to that, it was a very clear thing. Like, the nurses that I personally knew were all talking about it. They were going out and trying to spread awareness and whatnot. But that wasn't what you were seeing on TV. And a lot of the times you were seeing those ads of the nurses who were coming out against it. And it was usually people higher up with the at the hospital with the financial
administration,
interests, the admin, posing as nurses all the time, every time. And look what happened there, you know. And this is a common thing. Like you said, when you see an advertisement on the radio or those ones on TV, their spin on that. Their spin on that. They're not not biased. If it's telling you one way to vote or the other way to vote, then it's not unbiased. You need to go research both sides of it and come to and get someone, a trusted voice that you follow to kind of steer you in the right direction, so that you're not falling into that propaganda machine. Like get trusted sources, and if they don't have a stance on it, have them point you to their trusted sources. But and if not, then like Kamali said, just abstain. The one time I'll tell you, just abstain. Abstinence works
absolutely.
in this case.
Yeah. What Up America says, I'm not sure any of those gig platforms would even be profitable if the workers were W-4. Yeah, that's the thing. Like those gig platforms right now a lot of them are not running at a profit right now. They are operating, they are existing off of investor cash right now, and they are running at a loss, and they're doing it intentionally to grab all the market share that they can, monopolize. They just want to become a monopoly, because once you're a monopoly and you knock out all the other competitors, if you can get enough funding, then you can run at a loss, which Amazon's able to do. So Amazon does this all the time, right? Like they can sell something at a loss for a long time in order to price out all of the competitors out of the market. Once all the competitors are gone, then you're the only distributor of a product, then you jack up the prices, so this is what they're going to do. They're just doing a grab for market share right now. And so they run at a loss right now, even as they are right now. They purposely run at a loss. Video game companies do this often. They sell their platforms at a loss, knowing that they can make up for it in accessories and in first party games that they sell. So they will run at a loss. Absolutely. So they know that they're selling this. The platform costs more to build than what they sell it for, but they know that they're going to be able to make up for it through, again, those microtransactions, those accessories. That's where they really make their margins. And they
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, what that does is that makes it so that it's impossible for smaller competitors to come up, because your average small business can't compete in that way. You can't run at a loss. We, average people can't afford to run at such a great loss to ourselves. We can't build up a platform like that, because it's not just based on, it's not a profitable business as it stands. It's actually being propped up by investor cash that, they get billions, invested into them. Hundreds of millions and billions of dollars invested in them, and they can leverage that cash and use that to as a buffer for them while they run at a loss, and they price out all the competitors, and then eventually there's only one or two left in the market, and then that's where you can see things like surge pricing from Uber and all this other stuff come in, and you have no other choice, because it's like, well, what else am I going to do? We've already knocked out all the taxi businesses. They're all flailing right now, and so there's less taxis to operate. So now your only choice is to get an Uber or a Lyft at this stage. And that's when they really start to jack prices up and stuff. And so, no, they're not profitable right now. And they almost certainly wouldn't be profitable with their employees, treating these people as employees. But that's the whole point, is that maybe this isn't a profitable business. It's not something that people should be doing if it's not profitable. Or we agree this is a public service, and the government should, take over these businesses and run them as nationalized businesses, where we can then say, we don't do this because this is mass transit, and it's like what we need is to produce better mass transit systems instead, and be looking at public transit systems and putting our funding there instead of relying on these private, profit devouring industries or whatever, or corporations. And so I agree that what were you gonna say, Kwame?
And it's bad for everyone when you look at it. You look at regular Uber and Lyft and all of the assaults and just all of the terrible things that have happened because they can skirt by on the background check. Because they don't have to, they could just, their butt's not on the line. They just cut their loss and cut the guy off and blame it. He's an independent contractor. And it's bad for when you look at Uber Eats or DoorDash, which I'm guilty of using a lot of too as a resident fat guy. It's terrible for the restaurants. A lot of the restaurants don't make any money or a lot of money off it, but they have to do it to stay competitive because all of their competitors are on DoorDash and Uber Eats, and no one's calling directly to the restaurants anymore. It's bad for everyone. Contract work, for the most part, when it's something like a major company classifying their employees as contractors, is always terrible. Go holla at the WWE and all the shit that the terrible, awful things that have been allowed to go on, the terrible treatment. This is the place that's famous for having employees who work 360 days a year. You know, so like they're
doing like
always
really grueling, dangerous work too. You know, like very
destroying their
physical.
bodies, their minds,
And when you're a contractor, you're not protected by things like unemployment insurance or health insurance. You know, they're all required to go get that stuff for themselves when they can label you as a contractor. And that's what Richard Wolff was talking about there, that this has a ripple effect outward, not just from state to state, where they're going to be able to do this in more than just California. They're going to be able to do it across the country, but it's other industries that are going to be able to also begin to latch on to that law and say, hey, we have precedent. You know, the WWEs of the world can use the same exact legislation to say, we don't have to pay you. You're a contractor for us.
Not just the WWE. It's already happening in video games. A story came out recently that was talking, and this has been a company that I have been, you know, they're a large corporation, so they do bad things. I do recognize the good things that Microsoft does where they do pro-consumer moves, even if it's for their bottom line. But this is one thing that they have been called out for recently, is they've been doing a lot of contract work in the to skirt around hiring people on as full-time employees, giving them benefits. They have like I'm pretty sure one of the largest pools of contract work in the gaming industry. And that seems to be something that, as more people are talking about unionizing in that industry, seems to be something that more people tend to be leaning towards, is this contract work. And it's just bad business. It's bad news. It's bad news. There's no protection there. It's bad for the employees, and it's gonna affect all of us eventually if we continue to allow this to happen. It really is.
Yep, exactly. This is bad for all workers. It's not just about California workers. It's not just about Uber workers. You know, this is bad news for workers everywhere. And this is a major, major blow to labor, and we should recognize it as such. And just pay attention to these things, because you know, they have ripple effects outward, and they ultimately impact all of us. And again, this passed in a safe blue state, while meanwhile in Florida, where Trump was elected by the Electoral College in Florida, you know, Trump won the election in Florida. Those same voters that elected Trump also passed a $15 minimum wage by, you know, over 60% passed for a $15 minimum wage. So it just goes to show you that some of these issues are not as cut and dry, you know, red and blue as they seem. And, you know, you can have these populist issues like a $15 minimum wage passing in a place that votes for Trump, and then, you know, a state that votes overwhelmingly for Biden comes out and they vote against worker interests. So, you know, the damage that's dealt by a sort of, you know, by uplifting a Biden and getting more of these kind of voters out there, you know, might not always be, you know, spell good for workers in the short term or long term. So for everyone that was saying, you know, the election of Biden, all the great things that come with it, it also comes with things like that. Like when we prop up Democrats, and then they are so terrible on messaging and don't fight the real fights that matter, and resist in the real way, then we get legislation like this passing without any real resistance to it from, you know, the Democrats in California. So that was unfortunate to see. And yeah, it's just it sucks that it's gonna do so much damage to workers everywhere. So while we're on the topic of, you know, damage to workers, I think that is a good segue to our next topic that we wanted to chat about. And that is, but before we do, of course, if you're watching and you haven't done so already, please do us a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this out far and wide, like, subscribe, share. Also, if you can afford to do so, please support us on Patreon or on Coffee now. We can now take recurring contributions on Coffee, so you can sign up for a monthly donation on Coffee for as low as $1 a month, just like on Patreon. So please support us. Coffee gets us the funds most directly to us, so it's the sort of best way to support us is through Coffee. There are links in the description box, so please, if you can afford to do so, head over there and do so now. Become our first official Coffee subscriber. Actually, I don't think that we have any Coffee subscribers yet, so whoever does it first will be our first Coffee subscriber. So be a pioneer, help us be a leader, be a thought leader here, and support the show. And we'll keep an eye on it. And if we see anyone sign up, we'll give you a massive shout out. I actually don't have it up, but I'll pull it up right now so that I have it up, and I'll keep an eye out on it. And super producer Tammy seems to have a sixth sense for these things, and she always has an eye out for it. So one of us will catch it, and we'll give you a shout out on the show. If we don't catch it, right away, we will. We'll give you a shout out on the very next show. We promise. So, all right, let's keep cruising along. And interestingly, I'm hearing some feedback, but that's probably on my end. I'm hearing a slight echo on my end, but as long as nobody else is catching that, then I think we're good here. So let's talk about our next topic here. All right, let me just find our... Okay, so this is a fun one. Deutsche Bank has come out and proposed what they say is a privilege tax on remote workers to help offset the cost to pay the workers that have to go into the office. They want to do that through what they're calling a privilege tax, on a 5% privilege tax on the remote workers. So let's take a look at this. And this is what we call class warfare right here, folks. This is class warfare at its finest. And this is how they pit one worker against another worker. Just an absolute perfect example of that. So let's take a look at this article out of Business Insider from November 11th. It says Deutsche Bank researchers call for a 5% quote privilege tax on people choosing to work from home with the money given to low income staff. Okay, so they say in this article they talk about and you can see like a mother here working from home with her child. A lot of parents right now being forced into working from home, of course, to be able to watch their children who are home from school. They say working from home should be taxed to help support people on low incomes who cannot do their jobs remotely, Deutsche Bank said Tuesday. So people choosing to work from home despite their company providing a permanent desk should pay the tax at 5% of their salary. If companies do not offer permanent desks, they should pay instead, the report argued. So if the company doesn't offer you a permanent desk, then the company should pay. And let's not be fooled here. The company also serves to save a bunch of money from not having workers come into the office, because you don't have to pay for things like having people the lights on, the electricity bill that runs. Sometimes they provide food and things like that in the office. They also increases chance for workers comp claims that happen if you're working in the office and you get injured while in the office. Then that there are workman's comp claims that come into that. So just reduces those sort of issues. Also, they can extract more work out of their employees because they know that their employees aren't traveling back and forth to work anymore. So a lot of companies use that as an excuse to try to extract more work from their employees. Hey, you don't got to drive in, so maybe you can come in and stay a little, show up 15 minutes earlier, stay 15 minutes later, kind of thing. So they say the tax could raise $49 billion per year. And the bank said an average worker would not be worse off if they pay the tax, because they are saving money on travel, food, and clothes by working remotely. So they're saying, oh, well, the worker's not going to be any worse off because, they're saving money on travel, food, and clothes by working remotely. I don't know why they think that you don't need to get dressed every day if you're still going to need to be doing conference calls, things like that. Like, you still got to get dressed. So I don't see how it's really saving you money on clothes necessarily.
Wait, you still have to eat.
Food.
You still have to
exactly.
eat. You still have
food.
to eat.
I still don't understand, because you still got to buy food. What if you made your lunch already every day? It doesn't change a damn thing about how you eat. The only thing it saves on is travel. And yet again, it can also save the company on travel as well, because sometimes companies have to pay for travel anyhow. So, and again, it doesn't talk about how it saves the company company money of not having to pay to actually, to have that worker in the office, and the electricity that comes along with it, and all the other additional, costs that come along with having an employee in the office. Also, just doesn't say about all the other ways we could, tax. Where right now, they're talking about taxing one, potentially low income worker. These remote workers could be people that are making minimum wage remote workers, but we're going to tax those low income workers to pay for other low income workers, just because one happens to be able to work remotely. And again, it also just ignores the fact that like remote work isn't all great. Like there's a mental health, impact to working from home. I've worked from home like this. I speak from experience. I was software engineer by profession for about 5 years. I did a ton of working from home. In many of my roles, I worked almost entirely from home, or worked in large part from home, before the pandemic ever hit. So I have a lot of experience working from home, and I can tell you it can become very isolating. It can become it can have a major impact on your mental health. Everybody's experiencing it now from COVID and the isolation effects. I mean, you were feeling that before, and just being in the house all day, being sort of cooped up in the home all day can definitely damage your mental health, and can end up increasing your healthcare costs, because you have to pay more for therapy, for things like that. And I certainly did. I had to, it was more important for me to be in therapy than ever, when I was, when I'm isolated. And, we're experiencing it now under COVID, and it's important now. And everybody should, if you have access to that, and you have, health insurance through any means, and this screwed up system that we have, I do encourage everyone to treat your brain like you treat the rest of your body. You should be taking care of it as best you can, and don't feel any stigma around mental health care. You should certainly seek help if you ever need it, or even if you feel like you don't. Everybody can benefit from therapy. Even therapists go to therapy. So I think that it's something that we should all look to do if we have the actual privilege, because that is a privilege in this country, unfortunately, of having the health insurance that covers those costs. Then please, or you can afford to do so, please get the mental health help that we all need, and don't feel bad about it. I see a therapist typically regularly, a psychiatrist, therapist, and looking for a therapist right now, because unfortunately my therapist stopped accepting my health insurance. I'm unemployed right now, technically. And so I use the sort of public option health insurance here in Massachusetts, and even that you can get kicked off of. So they don't have to accept it. That's why we really need to move to a Medicare for all system. This public option that they talk about, we have a public option here in Massachusetts for low income people. If you can't afford anything else, you can get something called Mass Health in Massachusetts, but it's a mess to work with. It just adds one more layer to an already complex health insurance system. There's a whole bunch of hoops you have to jump through to get it. And then you can, not everywhere accepts it. And so when you have a Medicare for all system, and you have a monopsony where there's only one buyer like that, then it forces every, doctor's office, every clinic to accept Medicare for all, because that's the only place that you can get the procedures covered from. So they have to accept it. And so you get, you have much better choice of who you can see for your doctor. So this was gross, them trying to pit one worker against another here. It was so disgusting, when the real answer is like, we could do a transaction tax on Wall Street to pay for this, and that's like, that would hit all the Deutsche Bank, and their buddies. And there are tons of ways we can do this. Tax the rich.
I think that the other thing that we've somehow made it this far without failing to mention, that is what makes this even more insidious. That makes you guys probably see me over there just stewing over this. You absolute asshole. All right. For you to insinuate that the people who are going to work remote should be taxed in the middle of a pandemic, when that is what we need to survive right now, to end up beating this pandemic that we're going in, is such I would spit in your face right now. Whoever wrote that quote, if you were here right now, I loathe you. I cannot stand you. And the other key thing, you absolute douche. When people go remote...
Douche-a-bank.
Douche-a-bank. When people go remote, they usually don't get a raise. They usually get a pay decrease. They typically don't keep what they're getting paid at. As someone in the know from certain situations, that is typically what happens. So for you to then say, we're going to reduce your pay since, we don't got to pay you the same as the people who are working in there, because, they're assuming all this risk by still coming in and still seeing whoever they have to see in person. You don't have to travel anymore, so we're gonna bump you down, and that'll be your concession, so we can allow you to work remote. Oh, and on top of it, we're gonna tax you for the privilege of that safety of not going out there and potentially putting yourself at risk to maybe die. Are you kidding me? Are you all the way kidding me? Come on, man. It is so goofy. And the companies are definitely going to jump on that, because there's no incentive when the actual answer is, you should be paying a hazard pay to the people who are going in to make up for it. And remote people should be getting paid fairly as well. And then we tax the rich. The very obvious answer. I can't even. You're making my brain leak out of my ears with this preposterous idea. Tax the remote workers. Kiss my black ass. Sorry. I had to go
it's
off
absolutely necessary.
There.
Like,
God
no,
damn.
it's absolutely it's such an egregious one, and it's so gross. And this is, it's wild because we've covered this on the show. And if you watch our video if you search our channel for Richard Wolff Class Warfare, you'll see this video that, where we covered Richard Wolff talking about this and warning of this in advance and saying, this is what they're going to do. They're going to find ways to pit one worker against another worker. They're going to pit the employed versus the unemployed. They're going to pit the remote worker versus the in-person worker. They will find ways to try to divide us up and to draw these new arbitrary lines so that now, the in-person workers are going to get angry. They're saying, oh, I'm risking my health. You know what? They should have to pay more, because their real thought is, I deserve more money, but that should never come at the cost of, taxing another working class person, that's struggling themselves, and as soon as we do that and we're fighting over crumbs instead of joining together and taking the whole damn pie, that's how we got to recognize this. Is like, they are just throwing us these little crumbs to fight over while they take the 99% of the pie for themselves and laugh at us as we sit there and fight over these little bits and pieces. And so,
and what is the classification for a remote worker? Because when you have the CEOs and all the higher ups, because I know they're sure as hell not going into the office. Are they getting a 5% tax on all their money that they're making? Because I feel like they're not going to get classified as a remote worker for all intents and purposes when we start floating this shitty idea out there. So, because
absolutely,
and these are the people, they've been remote for before the pandemic remote. All right, I know a lot of y'all don't ever see your CEOs, your head, your chief of staff, any of these people ever coming in the office. You want to talk about the real remote workers? You want to tax those people? Maybe I'll be on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, tax the rich. Do transaction tax, transaction taxes on Wall Street if you want. Tax the rich. There are easy ways to get this money. We do not need regressive tax that tax the working class or middle class. Supposedly, we have no middle class, but we don't need to be taxing working class people. Robbing Peter to pay Paul essentially is just not the way we want to do this. We should be standing in solidarity and saying, no, we don't need, and nobody gets less here. We want everybody to get more. Because that's what the reality is that we should have looked at the situation and realized we don't need these CEOs and those people were not the essential workers. They weren't the essential workers. It wasn't them, it was the everyday, the people that have to show up every day and work the business, open the stores, run the shops, produce the services and the goods. Those are the people that are, that should be paid more, not that anybody needs to be paid less because they're forced into some situation of, and work, let's be real, is just naturally moving to more remote work. So what they're saying is, let's just offset that and not have to make the capitalist class pay for it. We'll make the working class pay for it. We'll make the employee class pay for it instead of the employer class pay for it. And that's what they're trying to do. They're just trying to offset their costs so that they can still continue to reap their massive, benefits from this and profits from this, and they just want to continue to reap profits from it at a time where we shouldn't be looking at, thinking about profit right now, and should just be thinking about people. How do we get through this pandemic in the safest way possible? It's absolutely the grossest time to be coming out with this, research for a privilege tax on working class people, as if working class people are privileged somehow. It's a privilege to be isolated, shoved out to the margins and isolated even further in an already isolationist system, an alienating system of capitalism. To alienate us even further and to call that a privilege is disgusting.
Honestly, this just feels like them saying the quiet part out loud, because not having to go out and being forced to endanger yourself in the middle of a pandemic is a privilege, sadly, because we don't live in a place, in a country that protects people. We didn't live in a country that paid people to stay home like all the other places that are safely come out on the other end. So some of us could afford to, and I'm not knocking like the people who had to stay home and with their kids, or I'm not knocking like anyone who had to do it, but it is a privilege that some people did not have. And that is why, as always, the marginalized people, the black and brown folks, are the ones who are dying at the higher rates, because they're the ones least likely to be able to have that privilege to stay home. They have to go out there and work at the supermarket with the funky ass Karen that don't want to put her mask on and want to cough all over them and then bitch them out so they could sit there and collect their minimum wage. Those are the ones that have to do it. So, yeah, I guess it is kind of a privilege to stay home, but I don't think that's how they meant it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much of it's a privilege, it's a privilege to be able to sit on your ass all day and collect the profits of somebody else's labor. Yes. That's the biggest privilege. And that's the people that we have to, focus our attention to, because it's, whichever one you are, if you're a remote worker, you're dealing with a set of stresses. And, if you're a remote worker, you're having to now manage, a lot of people managing children while trying to do their job. They're finding out it's not as, fun and entertaining and exciting. It's the same thing when they put like foosball tables in these tech companies and act like that's some big, like, oh, we have fun here. And you realize quickly, like, that's just a distraction. And you're just trying to get work done. And, it ends up being like, it's not a real benefit. What you really need is like healthcare and, and unemployment and retirement and 401k are the real things that you need. But they just throw you these little scraps and act like that's somehow some great privilege that they're throwing you. And really, it's like it benefits the company in the long run. And it's all for them to just continue to find a way to make profit. They were able to profit through this by making some people remote. And now that they found that they can keep those people remote, they're going to likely continue to keep them remote, because they found in many situations it cuts costs. You don't got to run the electricity. You don't got to run the same kind of internet services. And again, if you're providing food and all these sorts of things, it ends up cutting costs for the employer as well. And they're happy to try to just put all the burden onto the working class for what should be a situation where everybody was getting paid more, because and everybody should have been kept whole, and like you said, and given wage replacement programs from the government, so that we could have in other civilized places they gave people 80-90% wage replacement in other industrialized nations. And so, sorry, I meant industrialized, not civilized, but because we certainly are not civilized here, but we are industrialized. And they found a way to keep employees whole there all across the world, but we handled this pandemic so poorly, and we continue to suffer the consequences of that. All right, so let's get to our last story of the night here, because we are approaching our 2-hour mark, and we definitely want to cut this at 2 hours. Oh, but before we do, I want to give a big shout out. So shout out to FL, who is our first coffee subscriber at $5 a month. Thank you so much. FL says, congrats on monthly coffee donations, fam. Thank you so much, FL. That is awesome. Thank you so much, FL. Really deeply appreciate that. If you're not already in our Discord server and you want access to our Discord server, FL, definitely let me know and we'll get an invite over to you. We'll probably send you an invite. I think we have a way to get you an invite anywho. So we will get on that. You don't have to accept if that's not something that interests you. Don't worry about it. I don't want to add any more stress or burden into anyone's life. You can always mute all the notifications out of Discord and just, have it open, have it accessible. So if you haven't gotten access yet, FL, we will certainly, we would like to get you access to it if you're interested. So we'll send you an invite for that. Thank you so much to FL. Really appreciate that. Our first ever coffee subscriber. Thank you so much to FL. Big shout out there. $5 a month. That's awesome. That's huge. We appreciate that so darn deeply. So thank you so much. And FL has been a big supporter of ours on Coffee, one of our biggest supporters on Coffee. So thank you so much to FL for being the first. You're a pioneer. You are a groundbreaker. And we deeply appreciate you. Thank you so much, comrade. Love and appreciate that. All right. So if you haven't done so already, to everyone who hasn't done so already, please hit that like button down below, subscribe to the channel, subscribe, and share this out. Hit that share button, please. We need to, that's the big ask that we're going to start asking, is to get more folks sharing this out, because it just doesn't get seen by people. Unfortunately, with the YouTube algorithm, they just do not show our videos to new people, and it's really hard to grow the channel that way. So I've been trying to work a lot behind the scenes to try to do new types of video editing, to try to increase our presence on Twitter. Eventually, we're going to try to add an Instagram presence, but that's a little bit of a ways away. I just gotta, it's hard for me to manage all this stuff we need more funding so that we can, pay some folks to help me with this sort of work. So we'll get there. We'll get there with the support of folks like FL and our Patreon community and our coffee community. We will get there. So thank you so much to everyone who contributes and who supports in that way. Thank you. You can follow us on Twitch as well, twitch.tv/radical democracy. And of course, you can follow Kwame at Raised Fist Media on YouTube and on Twitter. Please check him out and give him a follow on both of those platforms. Give him a sub and a follow. All right. So, and there's links to our coffee and our Patreon down in the description box. So you can always click those links. All right. We're going to cruise along. Thank you so much to FL for that. Really appreciate that. But all right. So, and I'm actually going to give a shout out to Nina Turner. If you're not subscribed to her Patreon, it's a damn shame. Tim Black shamed me into donating to Nina Turner's Patreon. Nina Turner, who just led a national movement and was co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign, has her own podcast. She has a Patreon. It's called Hello Somebody. You got to search for it. You can't find her at Nina Turner. You got to search for Hello Somebody on Patreon. But please go and if you can afford to do so, sign up, become a Patreon supporter of Nina Turner, because she's a real strong leftist out there fighting the damn fight for all of us, and Black woman fighting for the left. And it's a damn shame that she doesn't even have 1,000 Patreon supporters after running a national campaign for Bernie Sanders that saw hundreds of thousands of donations to that campaign. She is continuing that work, and there is no reason why she shouldn't have at least 1,000 subscribers. I mean, we only have like 12 right now, or 13 now. But still, for everyone else listening, please support Nina Turner if you can afford to, even if it's like $1 a month, whatever you can afford, support Nina Turner. I signed up as a Patreon to her for $5 a month because I needed to, to show that support. Right. So, all right. Let's, we are going to get to this last story. I think I want to cover it. Yeah, we're going to cover it. So let's see. One sec. Let me just pull up. All right. So if you've watched this show long enough, then you will know by now that I frequently use Ryan Grimm as a resource, as a source for the show. He's a great reporter, left-wing reporter. For The Intercept. He once worked at TYT. I don't think that he's at TYT anymore, but he worked at TYT for TYT Investigates for a while. And he's just a great investigative reporter. Really appreciate his work. He does a lot of great work. But every once in a while, everyone has a bad take every once in a while. And Ryan came out with a horrendous take recently that I just wanted to call him out on, because we highlight him so much and we appreciate his work. But we also got to call out our peers in this way, to hold them accountable when they do, have these terrible takes like this, especially when it's white leftists, with terrible, essentially white supremacist takes. I got to call them out as a black leftist, because unfortunately here on the left, we don't have enough, black voices on the left, and stuff like this can often go just, brushed under a rug somewhere, and it's unfortunate and totally unchecked. And so I think that's the job of, the black left to really hold our white comrades to account on this. So let's take a look at I'm going to take a look here at some recent comments by Ryan Grimm. So yeah, let me pull this up here for us 1 second. So what we're going to look at first, so we're going to take a look at this tweet from Ryan Grimm, and then we'll look at the video that he was saying this in response to as well. We'll take a look at the video as well. So let me just prep all that here. All right. So I hope everyone can see this. All right. So this was Ryan Grimm's tweet, November 15th. He says, "This isn't just toxic and hateful. It's also politically suicidal to sweepingly attack tens of millions of voters like this, really putting the evil in lesser of two evils." So he says it's not just toxic and hateful. It's also politically suicidal to attack tens of millions of voters like this. So let's see who he's referring to, the tens of millions of voters who are being attacked here. So this tweet he's referring to is from Tom Elliott, and says, amidst a lengthy MSNBC segment attacking white women, the Democracy Alliance's Julie Kohler says, quote, "White women have taken an active role in the maintenance of white supremacy. White women weaponize their identities against especially black men." So let's look at this awful, horrendous attack on white women. Let's look at this attack on white women. Okay. So
what?
1 sec. I'm just gonna maximize this here. This is a 3-minute clip. We're gonna play this full clip here, I think. So sit tight, y'all. Take a look at this. This is a clip from AM Joy, Joyanne Reed's show, AM Joy. So this is her, I think it's like a Sunday morning show, I think, on MSNBC. And so here is AM Joy, a clip from that.
Was this overwhelming support for Donald Trump in the 2020 election a vote for Trump, or was it a vote against Biden-Harris with the emphasis on Harris?
Well, I think that it's really the maintenance of the status quo is what it showed.
Yeah.
So white women have been voting, narrow majorities of white women or pluralities of white women have been voting for Republican candidates for the better part of 70 years. And I think one of the important things that we can hopefully take away from this election is that these are longstanding patterns that are unlikely to change. And so this idea that Molly mentioned earlier, that kind of white women are the better angels of white people. And because we experience sexism and misogyny, which we do, that we somehow are more aligned or more empathic towards the oppression that people of color, and particularly Black Americans, experience in this country. Like, that has been routinely discredited at every point throughout history. Not only have white women and majorities of white women voted Republican for the better part of 70 years, white women have taken an active role in the maintenance of white supremacy. And that has not changed over the course of generations. And so we still see those legacies today, whether it's Amy Cooper or the Permit Patties, or white women that have weaponized their identities against especially Black men who threaten their privilege. These are long-standing entrenched patterns. Now, the one point that Rachel just mentioned that I do think is worthwhile paying attention to, and that I do think sort of this exit poll data obscures, is that I think one incorrect takeaway from this election is that therefore we just wash our hands and say, okay, we're no longer speaking to white women. Like, they're going to do what they're going to do politically. Their interests are their interests, and there's no point. And actually, I think that's where kind of delving into the subgroups of white women, and particularly looking at those white college-educated women who did appear to swing this election, where there has been real infrastructure built post 2016 that is doing real organizing in communities. That's not just swooping in with some ads in the weeks before the election, but that is really using white women's networks in those communities to organize. That does appear to make a difference. And not only that, I think we have to look at the fact that for the better part of 40 years, we have had a vast right-wing organizing machine in this country that has explicitly targeted white women. And so the notion that kind of white women are just going to do this, I think, in a country that's so rooted in white supremacy, it probably is the default position. But it doesn't mean that we don't organize. And I think one of the takeaways is that we have to look at where that organizing happened and the difference that it made. And there are examples of that.
All right. Okay. So that was Julie Calder there on attacking white women. And I'll show you a follow-up tweet of Ryan Grimm's here as well. Just something that he said that really, I think, drove this point for me, and really, I think, is what I want to react to here. So let me just show one other, just a tweet, one more tweet from this thread here, from Ryan Grimm. He says, so in response to this, he just said, would be much more accurate, empathetic, and politically pragmatic to say that for years, white supremacy drafted white women into its ranks in order to drive a wedge between them and other marginalized people whose interests they share. Draw people in, don't drive them away. So he says it would be more accurate, empathetic, and politically pragmatic to say that white supremacy drafted white women into its ranks. I don't know about y'all, but drafting implies an act where you don't voluntarily want to do something. It's the draft is what we do when we want to go, get a bunch of people to go off to war. We draft them into the army. They're not necessarily volunteering to go do it, but you draft them in because they qualify, and you are essentially forcing them into this situation that they don't want to really be a part of. And my response to this, and I try not to just quote my own tweets or anything like that too often, but my response to this was that white women weren't drafted into white supremacy, they co-founded it. All right, and we just need to make that clear, and not, we don't got to play these games. And I hate when this happens, because as a black man in particular, and I think that what she said here was 100% accurate about white women weaponizing their identity as, against black men throughout history. And there's this notion that white women are somehow are either I don't like to play oppression Olympics, but if we got to play like black people are going to win, black men are going to win those oppression Olympics against white women. We've had more oppression. We've faced more oppression in this country. They often point to like, oh, you black men got to vote first. Well, for one, they were disenfranchised through myriad ways after they received the right to vote. But then shortly thereafter, white women were given the right to vote as a reaction to it. And it was white women, white suffragists, that pushed that movement, kept black women, marginalized in that movement, and fought in order to secure the vote for white women specifically, and that was in order to offset black men getting that vote. And we know, I don't got to go any further than Emmett Till. That's my rebuttal to anyone who says, oh, well, how can white women weaponize their identity against black men? Look at Emmett Till, he was accused of whistling at a white woman and ended up having his eyes gouged out, being beaten, tortured, and drowned, and having his, tied to some weights and thrown into the Tallahatchie River by a bunch of white supremacists. And who never faced any prosecution for that. And including the woman who later admitted to lying about that, and lying in order that, telling a lie that got this, this black boy, a black child murdered. And it was later, told that it was believed that if he did whistle, he was whistling because it was a trick that was taught to his mother, because he had a really bad stutter, and he would sometimes whistle to warm up his vocal cords. So sometimes he had to whistle literally because he had a disability that he was suffering from. So this may have been a disabled black boy who was targeted specifically for his disability, and then beaten, tortured, and murdered. And that was the power of white women. We have all throughout history examples like this. And so I just found it really pathetic and frustrating to see this narrative of like white women, oh, poor white women. Luckily, I will say in the comments, if you read through the comments here, they were very uplifting to see, including white women saying, listen, we don't need to be coddled. You don't need to try to take away our agency. We are responsible for white supremacy as well, and we don't need to hide that fact.
So a couple points that I just want to chime in with. One, piggybacking off that last one, I feel like we're tiptoeing on some line of misogyny when we put this level of purity on women where they're not allowed to do wrong or evil, or like you said, you're taking agency away with them. They're full people. They are capable of bad acts. We don't have to excuse it every time, because at that point you're saying, oh, they're like, they're not capable. It's this weird, like, that purity bullshit that they try to espouse on white women. And another point that really steams me up is that they've always had this role, like you said. They co-authored this shit. When you look at what happened with the KKK, right? The men went out. Who stayed home? Who stayed home and washed those robes? Who stayed home and taught those kids that fucking racism when daddy was out? Because we know back then they were all about their gender roles, right? The dad went out. The mother's the one that teaches the family. So who passed down that racism, Karen? Huh, Karen? Who passed that racism down?
Yep.
I'm just wondering. So don't sit here and tell me that you weren't absolutely goddamn active in it. When the busing happened in like South Boston, and you go back and you watch those videos, who was on the front line spinning and throwing rocks at the black people? Huh, Karen? You want to tell me who was out there?
Absolutely.
Who was all across? I've seen those documentaries, all right, and it wasn't just the dudes. It was the white women who led that pushback against the integration in the busing. So like, please, I got into arguments with friends' mothers over this shit. Damn it! So don't tell me that you didn't take an active role in this. Come on.
Yeah.
Not in a world where Emmett Till got killed. Nah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I'm somebody, I was raised by a white woman, my mother's a white lady, and I'm telling you, this is my mama too. It's not just the Trumpists either, it's liberal white women as well that are propagators of white supremacy. It's there's overt racism. There's the, like, I want to lynch the N-words type of racism, but there's also a covert white supremacy that says, it's this constantly paternalistic, condescending, looking down to, telling us what we need, always assuming that what we want is to be more like them and to be indoctrinated into their ways, and assuming that we want to be like white people, and to try to, civilize us in that way, because they saw us as these savages and they wanted to civilize us into their ways, and they saw us this way. And white women were, as you said, it was in order to maintain the white patriarchy, it required the white male supremacist institutions required the assistance of white women to take care of the home, to do that vital work in the home, in order to allow those white men to go out there and to do their work, to destroy and damage, black and brown communities the way that they did. And also some white women participated much more directly. There were white women
the daughters of the Confederates. That was a whole ass organization that went on for a while, celebrating that shit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not out here saying that black men are some perfect thing or anything like that, or like we don't got our whole own set of problems and patriarchy, and we are absolutely prone to patriarchy and those same tendencies, and we could talk about that for days. But to play this game and to to act as if white women aren't, as far as human beings go in this society, it's not that it's like white men, then black men, or white men, then Latino men, or Asian men, then black men, and then white women down here. Like, that's not how it goes. It's white men, white women, and then everybody else, and we can sit there and play games about who's after that or whatever, but it's 100% white men and then white women in this society. And white women are seen as the most precious beings in society. Everything that white supremacy does, it does in a attempt to try to protect white women, to shield white women, and to protect this precious thing.
Birth of a Nation. What did they put out there in Birth of a Nation when they were trying to show black men as savages? What was it? That they were going to go and they were going to come for their women. That was the whole thing. They showed the dude in blackface throw the white woman over his shoulder with the wild eyes and run off into the bushes. So
Yep. Those are the savages that they saw and sought to like tame the savages. And you can look up in history books. I wish I had grabbed the reference. There was, in that thread with Ryan Grimm's thread, people responded with references to history books that talked about this very phenomenon of white women, throughout history being responsible, being, agents of white supremacy. And again, it's not just the Trumpists that they talked about in this video, because there was a slightly, like elitist tone to it, where it was essentially talking about college educated white women acting as if they were exempt from this issue, when the reality is that they are just as prone to these white supremacist tendencies as the uneducated or high school educated poor white women. So and even more so in many cases of that sort of paternalistic, condescendingly looking down at and determining what's best for black people in this country. And so I see a lot of that even in left spaces and liberal spaces that I occupy. I see a lot of that.
Or the fetishization. I remember the George Floyd protests, seeing the signs from, oh my God, the "I'm just here to protect my BBC" and all that.
Yes. Oh, man, Tammy can't stand that. I can't stand it. It's so gross. It's so terrible. It's like gross. Literally like, oh, I just want to have my mixed kids. These white women standing out there during the George Floyd protests with signs like, "I'm just here to protect my brown babies or my mixed babies." Or like, I just want to. So it's gross. It's like, it is fetishization. Racial fetishization.
It's on both sides. Yep.
Absolutely.
The liberal
absolutely.
Women are just as capable of a different type of racism, but it's still the same. It's still racism and white supremacy.
And to black men, we need to work. We need to do the work to start to unlearn some of this shit. And these having like Eurocentric beauty standards, upholding white women in a certain way. I know many black men who have torn down black and brown women to uplift white women, to say, oh, white women are so much better than black women for this, that, and the next thing. And that's disgusting. And we got to talk about that too. And we should always bring that up as black men, to acknowledge that does happen and that is a problem that we have to stamp out. And we do work, and and I know Kwame, I follow Kwame on all different platforms. I know Kwame does the work.
Especially because I used to be that dude. I used to be that dude that was curving dark-skinned women and shit-talking them in chasing those beauty standards, and that's it was terrible, reprehensible that I did it. And that's why I will never let up, and I will stay keeping the pressure on black men to move forward past that, because we have to. We have to do better.
Absolutely.
On so many issues.
Absolutely. 100%. I just couldn't agree more. Absolutely. So I'm going to go and get this stream demonetized real quick. I don't even know if I monetized it. Honestly, I'm moving closer and closer to not monetizing. And so, yes, I'm going to get the stream demonetized because I want to play this clip from Bill Burr. He did a stand-up on SNL, and I just really want to play this clip of him talking about white women. And he just is a great piece.
Remember the blowback from this clip.
Yeah, this is so good. This is so good. So this is gonna get the stream demonetized. I don't care because monetization is lame anyway. It's really low, anywho, and so I don't even care. Hopefully it doesn't get a copyright strike against it. But okay, we have comments too. So let me play this clip and then we'll get to all the comments. Just gonna play this clip real quick and then we will get to all our comments right after. All right. So this is again Bill Burr stand up on SNL, and we're going right to this part where he's gonna chat a little bit about white women and some of his thoughts on white women. And they have had no problem wielding that power for centuries, and so it cannot be understated really that white women coming out here at the last hour and this and trying to join the crowd and be like, oh, we're just as oppressed as you. It's like, no, stop, pause. You're just not. All right. And I hate to play oppression Olympics, but you're just not. It's not even freaking close. Okay. And white women just need to take a seat a little bit more often. They just need to take a damn seat and chill out and just start listening.
But
and
you have to give them their place, because if not, they'll just make a fake profile and pretend that they're a black academic for 5 years or so, like.
Yep. We got too many Dolazols, Rachel Dolezals and Jessica Krugs out there in this world who, when white womanism isn't enough, they go and they take the next best thing, and further weaponize identity. So that was something that I couldn't let pass. We got some comments we want to get to. Should I flip through it? You got. Okay, What Up America says, just go back and watch some documentaries from the 1950s about black people moving into white neighborhoods. Nasty, horrible, racist thinking, especially by women. Yes. Oh, man, that's so crazy that you say that. Like, oh, man, I had a clip queued up that I never got to play. Oh, my goodness. That clip of that. Oh, man, there was a clip of this white woman recently that was interviewed talking about how they don't want the poor people coming to their neighborhoods. Oh man,
spicy.
I never covered it. I don't think I ever covered it. I had it queued up. I had it ready to go on multiple. You know what? I got the clip somewhere. I'm gonna pull that up because I got it. Jeez. I'll try to find it. I thought I had it there. But it's not there. Sorry, y'all.
I completely agree on that sentiment. Obviously, What Up, as you seen me take my little detour as we reminisced of what some of my family members went through trying to integrate schools and whatnot in this place. So yeah, we see it all the time. That I think back to that picture of the Trumper, the Karen at the Trump rally, juxtaposed next to the white woman who was there when the Ruby Bridges, was that the name of the first black girl who went to when they integrated schools?
The busing, yeah.
The busing, yes. And the same, it's the same vein in the same part of the head, the same exact rage. It did not go away. It did not go away. It is still there. So in a world where we get a new Karen racist spaz out video, a new a racist dog walker video almost weekly, I just find this to be a real bad take.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got AOC. Amy Cooper,
He's battling AOC.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know who had the worst take.
I don't know
who had the worst take here. Like that. That is some real competition right there between the AOC Ron Klain tweet and the Ryan Grimm, white women aren't white supremacist tweet, I don't even know which one takes the cake for that one. Next comment. What if America says, yep, in that the white women were the most triggered in that, in that instance. Thanatos says, I'm tired of white women's role in white supremacy being downplayed and trivialized. Absolutely. She goes on to say there are tons of books and archives of white women's direct involvement, leadership, and pleasure from torturing and raping slaves. They didn't just sit pretty in the house and only use psychological torture. Yes, they were very directly involved. Thanatos goes on to say also white women slave owners raped black slaves too, men and women. So not only have they historically weaponized their pure, innocent white womanhood against black men and portraying them as violent predators, they were the same ones to enact sexual violence against black folks to begin with. That is such a freaking amazingly great point. Thank you so much, Thanatos, for that awesome point. Thanatos goes on to say, no marginalized group is othering heterosexual white women, LMAO. They been chose to differentiate themselves from the rest of us the minute they started demanding suffrage, etc. LOL. They chose to not be included from the rest of us. So Ryan Grimm can miss me with that. Let's invite them, not push them away. LMAO. It's like, and I hate that rhetoric of like, oh, we have to coddle the Nazis and the racists, and we have to bring them into our side. Like, I don't want to be a part of any movement where I have to be okay with their white supremacy. I'm not going to sacrifice on my principles and my value and my dignity as a human being to get some political gain. If that's the political system that you're trying to invite me into, I don't want to integrate into that system. I don't want to integrate into a burning building.
Sacrifice your supremacy. Sacrifice your fucking supremacy, fam. If you want a seat at the table, you leave that shit then.
And this is one of the reasons that I honestly tell people that my focus is mainly on building workplace democracy, and honestly amongst black people first. Like, I'm trying to build, black left media here, because I gotta find it in black people. Because to be honest, if what you're trying to tell me is that I need to go out in there and convince the majority of people in this country are white, and I'm sorry, but the majority of white people are still harbor a racism inside of them, a white supremacy inside of them. We have a white supremacist system. Even me as a black man, I traveled through this world with white supremacist mentalities in me, where I thought I was lesser than constantly because of my, having darker skin, because I'm a brown person, because I'm a black person. I internalized a lot of that, and we internalized a lot of that. So even black people are, subjected to internalized feelings of white supremacy. So for a white person to think that they're immune to that is absurd. And if you're telling me that I need to somehow sacrifice my humanity in order to convince these people, that's not a system that I want to be a part of. I don't want to be a part of that system. I would rather have my little teeny slice of democracy amongst, black people and people that are actually, fighting against anti-blackness. I don't want to have to coddle or like bring in these people that hate me or think that I'm lesser than a human being. I wouldn't tell any person to try to compromise on that. And this is something that I bring up.
It's like, wait a minute, did that dude just say the N-word? Oh yeah, no. But he's fighting for a better minimum wage and Medicare for all, so we let him slide on that part.
Yeah, it's like, no, I don't need that. That's not an ally to me. If we can't find enough support amongst people that are, recognize our humanity, then I'm sorry, but that's not the system that I want to be a democratic part of. I don't want to be a part of that system where I have to convince, I have to go and sacrifice my blackness in order to be accepted into that system.
And this is also like something that I touch on quite often. I like to speak up on, is just because you come from some level of marginalization, just because you're, this is why intersectionality exists. There's levels to this shit. There are levels to privilege. Some people are more privileged than others. And none of that matters to saying anything about you not being able to have some form of bigotry against someone else that falls a little bit lower on the privilege scale. Gay people have went through so much, but if you listen to queer people of color talk about their experiences in the dating world, and the no blacks, no fats, gay white men have a whole lot of racism in them too. And anytime you go down And even if you add in or slot in some form of marginalization, it does not remove your ability to also oppress against or have hateful feelings, whether they're active or conscious or unconscious towards other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in,
Nothing's
in queer
disqualifying.
communities, you have, there's a set of folks that in the gay community that are, trans antagonistic or transphobic. These
Exactly.
Yep, Kwame just brought up the white gay, gay white men, and so have a history. The no fats, no blacks, no fats, no femmes, no Asians. It comes up all the time in the dating world, and so I have to recognize, and we acknowledged earlier, and I will always acknowledge that as a man, I hold some power dynamic, in particular over primarily women of color, primarily Black women and primarily other women of color, because that's where where there is an actual power imbalance. That's where I can exercise my patriarchy over. Typically, I've been knocked down throughout my life by white women.
Also, as straight Black men, we also have that over gay Black men,
trans Black men or women. We hold the power over trans, Black men who they are going to be more marginalized than a cis Black man. A straight Black man is going to be less marginalized than a gay Black man. So we recognize that this is what intersectionality is, and this is why we have to recognize these layers. But let's not kid ourselves about that totem pole, because there is somewhat of a totem pole. I don't like to play Oppression Olympics, but if we are going to play that game, white women, you're not going to, I don't know if it's winning or losing or what you call it, but you're not, we've had it worse than you throughout history. All right. And I just want acknowledgement over that. Yep. Next comment. What Up America says, I think apathy is a third level of racism where you just ignore race. There's this great graphic of overt racism versus covert racism. And the overt racism is sort of the on the surface level, what you see, the really obvious, KKK, Nazis, lynching, like that level of saying the N-word, that level of racism is overt. But then there's right under the surface, there's this covert racism. And that's the bulk of racism happens at the level of covert racism. And one of the main tenets of covert racism is the I don't see race. That's a covert racist. Color blindness, exactly. Because that's a privilege. If you get to not see race, you never hear Black people saying I don't see race, because they're forced to see race. They're forced to acknowledge their own race because they're reminded of it constantly every single day in every interaction that they have. You're reminded of your race, and so you're not allowed to. You don't have the privilege of not seeing race. You have to see race because you have to be very aware of white people and making sure that you are ensuring that white people remain comfortable in your presence, and then also knowing what all the acceptable norms of whiteness are, because you have to know those things. If you're not aware of what is the white norms, then you will be seen as some sort of other. And so you have to be aware of white culture. But white people are allowed to float through their existence without having to have any recognition or awareness of Black culture, because it's not taken as the default in this society.
And then they get pissed when we start to gain any grounds, and we get our own TV shows, we get our movies that exclude them, and then they start to get mad about that, and it gets deeply, deeply, deeply frustrating. But another thing that I wanted
reverse
to say,
racism
no, get the fuck out of here. Another big issue with colorblindness is if you don't see race, if a pattern emerges, like, I don't know, Black men being killed at a disproportionate rate or being locked up at a disproportionate rate, it's really hard to see that when you don't see race. Because then it's just, oh, well, everyone gets locked up. Oh, well, everyone gets killed by the police.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Do we got some more comments we want to get to? What Up says, and I've literally heard of Karens complaining that, quote, Karen is akin to the N-word. Yes, I've seen this nonsense rhetoric of saying it's a slur.
The greatest thing that someone
is misogynist
pointed out.
Somebody said it was a working class name. Yeah.
The greatest thing I've seen someone point out is that they say that calling Karen is the same as calling is the same as the N-word, but one of those words in that sentence you can say, and the other one you call the N-word.
Exactly. Yeah, we didn't say the K word, like you don't have to call it the K word because it's not that, it's not that harsh of a term, clearly. Absolutely. So yeah, that's a hilarious one. Thanatos says, and of course, white womanhood in its connotation to purity, innocence, and the epitome of elegance, beauty, definitely is weaponized against Black women and other women of color too. Within rape culture, the hypersexualization of Black and brown women, especially Black and Indigenous, is used to, quote, justify violence against women of color more than against white women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely. 100%. Thanatos says the real left white women allies / comrades aren't begging to be included in marginalized spaces. They know they got one foot in the door, but they're not the ones trying to barge through the damn door. The ones that are trying to, quote, take up space are white feminists and right wingers who we've been criticizing and still don't deserve to be coddled. Yeah. Exactly. And then Thanatos goes on to say, grouping all those types of white women together as the same type of potential ally is putting unnecessary effort, not worth the end result, onto the rest of us. Yeah, we want solidarity, but solidarity doesn't mean compromising the whole points of the fight to include them and their comfort too. Since when were we centrist, Ryan? Exactly. Like, that's some centrist ass take right there. Thanatos says, I'm all for educating people, but I don't need to coddle them and bend over backwards to do it. Exactly. And the responsibility is on the privileged person to go and educate themselves. Like, you can't require the marginalized people to be doing the work of educating the privileged. Like, it's not on us. Thanatos says, like, really, Ryan, how is that your big takeaway from people pointing out that even more white women voted Trump this year than 2016? Like, that's literally what this was about. So all stem from them just pointing out that, like, white women increased their vote totals to Donald Trump this year, and that in significant numbers. And that was, worth pointing out. So that was, they increased quantitatively more than anyone else. So.
And in the worst case scenario where we follow through what Ryan is saying about how this is all misogyny and this is an attack on white women, if there's anything that we've learned from the fact that them voting more for Donald Trump now than in 2016 tells me, it's that you know what? Misogyny's not exactly a non-starter for some of them. Just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. I mean, that's clear. From that, it's like, there were certain things about like Biden that just were like, he was beyond the pale to me. But those voters clearly don't have the same litmus test that I do for who they choose to be the quote leader of the free world. And so Thanatos goes on. She says, for that, I'm going to point out again that white women benefit the most from affirmative action, LMAO. Yeah, affirmative action has by and large failed. I saw Crystal Ball, white woman, but, a decent leftist, do a piece this morning that I didn't get to watch yet, but I saw just the title of it was about how affirmative action has failed. And I think that by and large it has, unfortunately, not worked out the way that we had hoped for, just not been able. And then they just like fought against it. They've properly propagandized against it as well. But it by and large, it benefited white women more than any other group. And this is just another way that when you don't put in really specific terms and when you just try to do things that target, quote, minorities, it will always disproportionately end up benefiting white women over every other quote unquote minority. Tim Black had some professor on recently on a show that was talking about this and how you have to have really targeted legislation. And if your legislation isn't targeted for Black, brown, indigenous people, then or Latin people specifically, you have to get really specific about it, or the benefits by and large will go. When you just go do blanket terms of helping minorities, those programs, those social services always end up disproportionately helping white women. So we need to have more specific, more targeted policies. The ones that I advocate are always targeted policies for Black people, specific reparations, policies for reparations to Black people in this country. It's about damn time that Black people got what they are owed for building this country for free. And I will never stop emphasizing that point and hammering that point home. Things like the contract with Black America were part of that actually did have specific legislation targeting Black people. That's the kind of stuff that we actually do need. But the conversation isn't even about that, because all we did was take that moment to shit on Ice Cube and ignore the actual demands of somebody like Professor Derek Hamilton, who helped write the platform as well, a left activist and scholar, Black left activist and scholar. So, oh, okay, we cut out for a second. Dave DeCenzo says Bradley Whitford said he didn't know the quote, "I would have voted for Obama a third time" line was supposed to be hold on, we're cutting in and out. Sorry, let me do that one more time. Are we back? You back, Kwame?
Yes, I am back.
Okay. All right, cool. So Dave DeCenzo says Bradley Whitford said he didn't know the quote, "I would have voted for Obama a third time," end quote, line was supposed to be a joke. These people are just like, yeah, like they don't realize their liberalisms, you know, like they're just their gross liberalisms. They're terrible. So yes, they're awful people. All right. Do we have anything else that we need to get to? No? All right. Well, we're going to wrap it there. We went 2.5 hours, a little over time. I wanted to cut it at 2. Went a little bit longer than intended, but that's okay. Love to chat, stay in chat after the fact. It's kind of like our post game, like what TYT does their post games, you know, where this is our essentially our post game here. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us, for chatting, for hanging out. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button, subscribe, share. Shout out to all the commenters. Thank you to everyone who commented today. Thank you so much again to FL for that coffee subscription. That is amazing. Thank you for being our first supporter over there. That is dope. Love and appreciate that. Thank you so much. And so thank you to everyone for joining us. You know, keep an eye out. We'll do some editing, get some clips out, all that sort of fun stuff. Thank you to Kwame, Raised Fist Media, for joining us today on short notice here to do this show. It was good to have a guest host with me on my first time back, because just shaking off the rust. It's always good to have you with us, Kwame. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Like I said, we'll have some cool stuff coming up soon. I will confess that I got a bad bit of my mental health took a nosedive after the election. I got some serious election fatigue, and I have not been producing content the way that I would like to over for Raised Fist Media, but I do intend on showing that channel some love. I definitely intend on being on here a lot more. And yeah, we got some good stuff coming down the pipelines. The Discord is finally about to launch, much later than when I said, but it's coming. And I may have dragged a couple people through Lovecraft Country, but the very, very specific purpose of doing some great coverage and breakdowns on that as well. So yeah, stay tuned and look forward to more. You might actually get some a little bit surprisingly sooner than you think, as well as a little bit more freeform stuff. I want to get my buddy over here on some a little bit more unprofessional, a little bit like, loosen up the collar. Maybe we hang out and chat a little bit, and y'all can come have a little bit of fun with us.
Awesome. Look forward to it. So everyone check that out. Support Kwame over on patreon.com/raisedfistmedia. You can find him on Twitter and on YouTube at that same name, Raised Fist Media. Check him out there. Show him some love. We'll have him back on again soon, I'm sure. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you to everyone else for joining us. I will play us out with our great outro song, which I always have to thank. What Up America, aka Plasmon, for their great, amazing work on this music for the show. So thank you so much to Ian for their work there. All right, thanks to everyone. Peace.
People you're talking about, they spent money on white women. They set up bars and they went playing pool and golf for $1,000 a hole, and they were known to make millions and millions when there wasn't no high taxes, and they were not hindered by white America. They were allowed to see the white America is completely closed all the doors on me. I'm not allowed to work in America, out of America. I was stopped right in my prime just when I started making money. So you can't compare me with nobody like Joe Lewis or nobody.
If you are proud if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is worked to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
That other kind of socialism that revolutionizes the workplace, brings democracy to the workplace for the first time.
So that's one way. And then the other thing is, in my more optimistic days, he's such a perfect endpoint of everything that is toxic and dysfunctional about the United States, about capitalism, about the 80s, that maybe this is the final sort of disgusting burst before we evolve or change it to something better.
Talk about things about why we need a new party. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of do this. Why do we need a new party? We need a new party because both parties suck.
What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization?